You see, look, if you look at this here, right, there's quite a lot of this act being repealed. This is that 1700 Settlement Act, and I've done a video on to talk on it before, but it's hard to actually work out what has been repealed and what hasn't been repealed. But the main part that I find interesting is that it said that unless you are basically a native British person, you can't actually be a member of Parliament, and certain other rules. I think it's to do with like some sort of protecting the country, basically, you know, because otherwise you've got all those espionage laws and so forth. But obviously, over time, a lot of it's been changed and repealed. I don't think that Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman would be really too happy with this law if it was still in effect and hadn't been changed. It suggests that, you know, foreign powers or entities shouldn't basically be in charge of the government of a country, of a certain people. And I think that if you've got a nationality of people who are all of a certain caste, then, you know, those people have a certain mindset and understanding that basically sets the status quo of the country. Without being racist, that would also mean that, you know, that England shouldn't really be meddling in the affairs and running of other countries that have their own nationality fairly, you know. But it says that you can have a king who's foreign. I don't know whether that would be out of, you know, there was a lot going on, you know, with relatives of monarchs and so forth. I don't really know how they'd work out how you'd actually end up with a monarch who was foreign, but, you know, I think Richard Lionheart was meant to have been French. And to do with certain countries, the interests of other countries and so forth. But regardless of arguments and disputes over nationality, there's actually something in here as well about judges and impeachment and pardons to do with how... but the Commons doesn't even really use any judicial powers anymore. I think that was quite limiting to the power of England, really. I mean, if MPs can hold judicial actions, you know, people like Andrew Bridgens would be able to actually try and get things done. Really, it is a bit of a limitation of the power, really, of Parliament by taking that away. But even though, you know, there's all that to consider, this is the part that I find the most interesting and relevant now in regards to this World Health Organization's attempted takeover. And it says basically that all the laws, this is like 1700, so it's like, you know, 1688. It's 12 years after the 1688 Bill of Rights. Says that the laws and statutes of the realm confirmed, this is right at the end, right? And whereas the laws of England are the birthright of the people thereof, and all the kings and queens who shall ascend the throne of this realm ought to administer the government of the same according to and said laws, and that all their officers and ministers ought to serve them respectively according to the same, and the said Lords Spiritual and Temporal and Commons do therefore further humbly pray that all the laws and statutes of this realm for securing the established religion and the rights and liberties of the people thereof and all other laws and statutes of the same now in force may be ratified and confirmed, and the same are by this majesty and by the advice and consent of all the lords, spiritual and temporal and commons, and the authority of the same ratified and confirmed accordingly. So it seems to me that there's an obligation to protect the rights of the people. And I would suggest that it says that the laws and statutes of the realm are confirmed. Now, in the 1688 bill, that is the right of the subject to petition the king, and all prosecutions and commitments are illegal. Commitments, you're held to commitment by the Great Seal Act and by, you know, this 1700 Act I don't think this last bit has been repealed, but you'll have to check. So this last part here, you can actually, a foreign power, a foreign entity cannot actually take the rights of the liberty away. And this is the thing, right? I've been right about quite a lot of things. I'm right about this YouTube issue. I was right about them trying to take away the camping rights on Dartmoor. And I've been right about various other things, including Jacob Rees-Mogg not being allowed to be on GB News, right? I'm not wrong about that. Even like the select committee know that Mogg shouldn't be on there. And Professor Tim Wilson also agrees. But so this, all those World Health Organization clauses, right? Why are those World Health Organization clauses in there? What say that, you know, all of our rights and liberties? They're not in there because the WHO decided, oh, let's put them in there, right? The World Health Organization didn't just suddenly decide in the United Nations, oh, let's put this clause in that says we'll uphold the liberties and rights of the realm. No. They've got to uphold the liberties and rights of the realm. They can't not do, because we can't give them away. We can't actually give the rights and liberties away to an overseas or foreign power. You can't do it because Parliament isn't allowed to, right? And that's why the World Health Organization has those clauses in, because we can't give them away. And it has to have them in, and it actually can't remove them. And we cannot actually agree. Well, the thing is, they can't be taken away. They can't be. Not by any foreign group or organisation, whether we're a member or not. They can't do it. And I'll tell you another thing. This is very, very similar to YouTube. YouTube are like an international platform, an international company. And YouTube have been trying to say that we don't have the right to petition on there, that we don't have political rights on there for videos, and that their policy overrides it. Now, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's running for president, took them to court. And the court kind of like, I don't know what the status is, but we put in some legal arguments because they've overlooked the First Amendment, because the freedom of press is actually the freedom of use, the freedom to access and use the press as part of a democratic function for the government to function as much as us in a democracy. And that would be things like local councils have a legal requirement to publish notifications of certain road closures. You've got a right to put witness appeals in for... I've just put a witness appeal into a newspaper using the Criminal Law Act 1967, and it's the right to petition as well. The newspaper has to it has to serve as a certain base framework function. And that even goes so far as, like, you know, even if you weren't publishing it in the newspaper, even if you were just distributing pamphlets in your local area for a election or something, a business can't refuse you ink. You can't say, we're not going to sell you any ink, because then you wouldn't be able to print the leaflets, right? Even though it's a private company, because then you wouldn't be able to print the leaflets for the election. because then you wouldn't actually be able to run the election. Like, every company would say, well, we're not selling you any ink. And I gave this example, like in America, if you're out in like the hillbilly wilds and there's only one printer in the town and you've got two political parties and the printer refuses to sell ink or print posters for one of the political parties, then you won't be able to run the election. You couldn't function. So that's the freedom of press. You can get those leaflets printed in the local area, or you couldn't actually run the election fairly, you know, because you won't be able to do it because, like, the local printer might say, I'm not participating. And the thing is that I pointed out that, you know, under Companies House, so that company itself can't exist without the government forming a company, because that's why you've got like a certificate for your company. It's formed under the government. So, like, because the government could just say, you know, if the printer basically, so if you've got like a local printer in England or America, it doesn't really matter, right? Because it's not that different in England and America anyway. So, like, you know, if the printer says, I'm not selling ink to, you know, the police, so they can't do any investigation because they can't write down any statements. Or if the printer says, I'm not selling ink to the government because, you know, we don't support this political party, then the government could say, right, well, you're not having a company anymore, then we're going to, like, you know, take your certificate away, because, like, the company can only exist because the government has say, right, you can form a company under, like, Companies House, you know. Companies House allow them to exist and form a company under the realm, but that company has it's a limited company. It's limited to what you can and can't do as a company. And some of those limitations are, you know, it's allowed to be a company and exist and trade with a certificate as long as it complies with the laws of the realm, which are, you know, it's got to apply these rights, you know, the function of democracy, the actual function and rights of democracy. So, you know, otherwise, you know, if it's not going to play by the rules, if it's not going to comply with the country, then, you know, the country would say that, you know, it won't let them have a company, you know. So this is just for, like, fundamental, so you can have a country and laws, because otherwise, you know, if all the companies suddenly said, you know, we're not going to supply the government with concrete paper or ink, then the government couldn't even write legislation, you know. The companies could say, we're not even going to allow Parliament to function because we're not going to supply it with materials, you know. You know, so you have to, you know, YouTube basically, when you look at all the laws and the different once you fall into a certain category, a certain classification, when it's for a function, whether it's legal case, to function in legal cases, or whether it's to function, you know, like in voting in elections and petitions and referendums and so forth, the companies have got to they've got to, because really, it's actually, to be honest, I figured out, I think it works out at that if you've got, like, you know, like if the police are investigating a crime and they need to write down a statement, and if they don't have any pens, and if, like, a pen shop refuses to sell them pens, that's perverting the course of justice, because they're refusing to, they're actually obstructing an investigation, really. That's how it is. They're obstructing the investigation, so it's actually perverting the course of justice if someone refuses to sell pens to the police when they've got to write statements. And that's why forming a company under Companies House, you've got to have like the liberties of the realm. Companies have got to comply with like the laws of the kingdom, basically. So, you know, so this is YouTube. So YouTube are basically trying to, as a corporate entity, they're trying to kind of like boss. I mean, they even removed one of the Australian Parliament videos, you know, and they removed one of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s presidential candidate run interviews, you know, where he's promoting himself in the video and his policies. So, you know, YouTube can't take over the world, and because, you know, the First Amendment, freedom of press, is essentially the same as in England, because we've got in England, we didn't actually have like the First Amendment. It doesn't say freedom of press in the Bill of Rights. It says like, you know, freedom of speech and right to petition and so forth. But we have got freedom of press through like the Town and Country Planning Act and control of advertisements and the classifications and like the certain clauses in the Referendums and Elections Acts which state that publishing does extend to not just writing it yourself or a speech or representation, but it includes you know, electronic devices and sharing it on the internet, basically making it available to the public by any means and in whatever form. So it is the same as the First Amendment, really, through more modern acts, which you need to function, or you can't actually operate, because, you know, you could say to like Rishi Sunak, you could say to him, look, well, everything's going, you know, well, everything's going well for the government while they're in government, you know, but what happens if, you know, I mean, if Jeff Bezos bought all of the stationery shops and all of the paper companies and took them into ownership of Amazon, for example, every single one of the businesses, I know Rishi Sunak owns a lot of businesses, but just for an example, if Jeff Bezos bought all the stationery companies and then suddenly he like had a different political opinion to Rishi Sunak's party, and if he'd suddenly decided that, you know, I'm not going to sell you any paper to the government, then how is the government going to do business through the day? They can't. So this is the thing, things like that, which people don't really, they take it for granted. But, you know, at the moment, it's us, you know, we're the ones who are, you know, like people are having their channels taken down. The government are under threat at the moment, you know. I think that David Davidson had his channel taken down and it was put back up again. You know, they're picking on Andrew Bridgen at the moment and Lawrence Fox and GB News. But, I mean, you know, if this is the thing, you know, the government have got to take into account, you know, if things are going their way, what if things weren't going their way. You know, the government would soon be starting to complain, like people are complaining about their YouTube videos getting pulled. If, you know, some big mega oligarch or corporation bought up loads of companies and suddenly they formed their own political party and, you know, decided they were opposing the government and then decided they weren't going to sell them any stuff, then the Parliament would soon be complaining about it, you know. But this is the thing. It already exists. You can't refuse service for democratic function, whether it's, you know, from basic supplies of materials all the way through to publishing. Because when you think about it, what is printing? Printing involves getting ink and paper and combining them together to make something, to make a document in large numbers, or whether or not it's like on the internet. So the ink is part of the printing. you know, the ink is part of the printing process, like the actual ink itself. If you can't have the ink, then you can't print. So, you know, I do think that this government currently, that the current Conservative government is behind. I think they're affiliated with Google, and I think they're affiliated with the WHO. I think the Americans are starting to come round now that the World Health Organization is not such a good idea. I mean, they've just, I think the American government have just kind of like said that they don't agree with these CBCDs, which I know the Sunak government kind of like was promoting these CBCD payments or whatever, and I don't think the American government like it. But when it comes to the World Health Organization and this taking the rights away, it's essentially what YouTube have been trying to do in regards to our political videos, like trying to say that, you know, their policy overrides it. It's effectively the same position with the WHO, removing those clauses, removing our rights, and saying that they can override them. They can't actually do it, and it's for the very same reason that YouTube can't do it either. Because they can't. And it's not really anything to do with the WHO. It's the fact that our government can't do it. Our government can't give up those rights. They're not allowed to. So any agreement with a foreign company will be unlawful under English law, not under the WHO. So this fact that, you know, the Parliament are keeping it quiet and they're not doing anything about it, you know, even though there's this Tess Lawrie petition, which has got over 100,000 signatures, that Dr. John Campbell and various other health docs, you know, academics, well-known academics, have been trying to get this debate in Parliament, which they've already got. You can't actually, this government it would be treason if this government failed to act and intervene, because in law, a failure to act is sometimes regarded as, you know, a failure to act would be treason. It's not like doing something would be treason. A failure to do something would be treason. So a failure to block the WHO from removing our sovereignty is actually treasonous under the 1688 Bill of Rights, because they would then be holding us to a commitment to a foreign body. And I don't really think that any of the ministers get it or taking it seriously enough. There's already, I mean, I don't really... The thing is, there's already that Tess Lawrie petition. So, I mean, what else can you do? I mean, there's already a petition that people have signed and got over 100,000 signatures. I mean, so therefore, there isn't really any more petitioning to do. What the situation that we're in is that Andrew Bridgen is saying that they're kind of just like delaying this debate about it, or they're just trying to like kind of, they're basically, at the moment, they're failing to act. So Andrew Bridgen needs to get this right, because, you know, I think he's been ill-advised by a lot of ministers in the Ministry of Justice, and, you know, Lawrence Fox shouldn't really have been arrested either. In fact, I don't think Lawrence Fox actually broke the law anyway when he got arrested by Met Police. To be honest, I've been looking at the legislation, and GB News, the whole channel's illegal because it, by design, it has been designed and created to bring in different political figures, whether they're serving ministers or political party leaders or not, and debate, debate matters, which is basically trying to get people to vote for one side or the other. So none of them should be on there. And what they thought is they thought they could get away with getting, if they got someone on from every party, it would look fair. But the thing is, You can't have someone on who's a leader of a party or a minister, because that's illegal. Because the thing is, GB News operates all year round. And the thing is, these different various referendums and various elections and various other matters are in continuous motion circulation, right? And these subjects are coming in and out of the news and in and out of discussion all the time. And it actually says that you can't discuss anything in the election period or out of the election period or in the referendum period or out of it, even if it has the potential, even if you aren't influencing the electors, but it could possibly influence the electors in their voting and so forth. And it actually says you can't actually have ministers presenting programmes. They can answer questions. They're allowed to be guests, basically, on a programme, but they can't present them and guide the programme. And it's got nothing to do with what type of programme it is, whether it's in news or current affairs. It's the fact that you're an elected minister or you're not, or you're a political party leader or not, and you are in a position to, things you say are either advising the public one way or the other, or putting your opinion as that elected official, which is going to influence people, and you're not allowed to do that. And, if they want the law changing, then by all means, if the government want to change the law, they've been fiddling around with the law all they want. But as it stands, and actually, I'm sorry to say, but Rees-Mogg is actually illegal. He says that it's an offence. He actually says that it's an offence. I don't know about Lee Anderson, possibly even that select committee guy, that Scottish MP, unfortunately. And when I actually mentioned that, I wrote into him, and that's when that tree got pulled out of Hadrian's Wall, that mysterious event at the same time. For oddly enough, when I was looking at that MP's address, there was some something popped up on Google Maps, highlighted on there, something like May's hairdressing or something like that, which I thought was quite funny. Somewhere near his electoral office. But anyway, so actually, according to that referendums act to do with broadcasting, Mogg is breaking the law, because he himself is an elected MP, and really his main job is an MP. And although there's certain things to do with your primary and secondary income and so forth, the fact that his primary job is MP, and if you would have another business that would be like secondary, he gets a wage from government. The fact that Mogg probably makes more money out of all his businesses than he does from being an MP, and he gets paid a massive salary from GB News, it makes his MP job not his primary salary, because they're paying him so much on GB News, right? And that's a bit of a cheat, because if GB News were paying him a small amount of money, like less than he's getting for an MP, then there's a clause that actually kicks in that Referendums Act, which actually says that, Mogg, his MP is not his primary income, So by paying Mogg a massive money, they're trying to get him around that clause, by overriding his MP status. But it doesn't matter about that, because the fact is, however you look at it, when that show is running, 365 days a year, all year round, it's going to dip in and out of election and referendum and voting on the various subjects that are going to come in and out of the programme. And it's about the subjects, and it doesn't matter whether it's in or out of when those elections and referendums are running. And also, it actually says that by design, if it's designed to affect the voters, doesn't matter what type of programme it is, it doesn't matter whether it's the news or current affairs or sport or whatever. Now, if you've designed a programme so you're bringing in political people to talk about politics from all different parties, You're designing it to try and affect the voters because they're all going to have a say. You know, Mogg says this, Lawrence Fox says that, you know, Nigel Farage says this, someone says that. So what you're actually doing is you're designing it so that all of the political parties are coming together to try and put their own view, which is to try and get the voters to think what they say or debate. And the debate's going to be on Parliament. They're allowed to be guests, but they can't present. Now, the design of the programme, therefore, is criminal. It's actually illegal. And it attempted to try and make it look like, oh, you know, this is fair because we're having someone from all spectrums of politics. But that actually made it more illegal. It's actually made it more illegal. It's actually, in fact, it's made it, the whole thing is completely and totally illegal. GB News' design and intention is criminal. And the fact it's running all year round and you've got these presenters on all year round, they can't, you know, even if they were to avoid mentioning or even speaking about, like, you know, something that was up for referendum or election, like, you know, leaving Euro, even if Mogg managed to evade an entire topic, right, what was dipping in and dipping out of elections and referendum periods, even then it says that you can't actually be an elected MP. And the fact that they've got different MPs all talking about different political things and their own views of it, it's designed to try and persuade the public either way or. So it doesn't really matter which side either or, they're all doing it for their own side illegally. So GB News is completely and totally illegal. And, you know, what about the newspapers though? What about Boris Johnson having a newspaper column? What about that Nicholson guy? You know, the select committee guy, even him. You know, they're trying to lie and say, oh, Mogg, you know, Mogg shouldn't be on, but he can be on a current affairs. No, he can't be on. It's not. There's absolutely nothing whatsoever about what type of programme it is. They're trying to do that on the design of the programme. Oh, it's designed for the news or current affairs. No, it doesn't matter. You could have sports, but you could have a sports programme, and if you've got politicians on there who are talking about politics, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's a sports programme or not. It's the fact that they're elected MPs and they might be discussing political matters, even whether it's sports, even if they're talking about, you know, if you had a sports programme and then they started talking about, you know, the Ministry of Culture and so forth and the regulations for football should be changed, then you've got MPs. You could have Mogg, Nicholson, Nigel Farage and Lawrence Fox sat around the fucking football table talking about the Ministry of Culture, you know, and that would be illegal because, you know, if they start talking about, you know, the laws governing, you know, sports regulations, it doesn't matter whether it's a sports programme or not. It's affecting the voters' opinion either way, and they're all in on it. So it's just GB News is an illegal programme, and if they want to get up to speed with modern times and the fact that, you know, we've got YouTube and, you know, maybe it's time we should have ministers on programmes and so forth, I would actually suggest that, you know, they should have changed the law beforehand, and, you know, tough, they haven't done, and they've broken the law. And if this is the thing, MPs are becoming obsolete now because everyone's got a political opinion and everyone's getting a lot of airtime, and it's really affecting, it's swaying the public, and these major parties are starting to lose their grip, and they didn't like it. So they were trying to pull this GB News programme out to try and get a grip again. I mean, you would have thought Parliament had a grip, but when you watch Parliament, no one turns up. I mean, you watch Andrew Bridgen in Parliament and no one's turned up. There's more of the public have turned up and you can hear them cheering. There's more of the public there. So even when the MPs do their thing that they're meant to do, which is turn up in Parliament and debate things, that's when they get to have their say. That's when they get to influence the public through parliamentary debate. They don't want to. Instead, if the MPs had wanted to all turn up for Andrew Bridgens' debate and have their say about it, instead, they want to try turn up on GB News and have their say. If as many MPs had as much interest in turning up in Parliament as they did as turning up on GB News, then we'd actually have a functioning government. But now they're wanting to replace Parliament, really, with these TV programmes, and you can't actually do it. It's illegal unless they're invited on as a guest. I would suggest to Rees-Mogg, if he would have spent more time turning up in Parliament to have a say, rather than trying to say it on GB News, then more people might have started watching Parliament. But the truth of the matter is that if you look at, Senator Rand Paul, if you look at any of the American senators, if you look at any of the British MPs on their own channel, they're just not popular with people, and this over 50% non-turnout of voters now, this is why corporate and business is taking precedent over everything, because MP, they know that people are more interested in going to the cinema and watching a movie, so they can influence people through the movies. People are more bothered about going to McDonald's and getting some food, or going to watch a football match, and that is where they influence people the most, through their products and cartoon characters and so forth, because people aren't really interested in politics. They find it boring. So if they can choose the right stars like Ed Sheeran or whoever, if they can find the right stars and get them pitching what they want to pitch, which is buy products, buy Rees-Mogg's products, buy Rishi Sunak's products, investments, buy McDonald's, buy food, buy these mobile phones. They're getting you to do what they want you to do, which is they want you to all have the mobile phones, all buy their products, all live their lifestyles, all listen to this certain music. And then you're doing what they want you to do, which is, they've got more, there's more, less than half turnout for voting. It doesn't matter, because they've got everyone doing what they want in their lives, buying their phones, watching their TV programs and so forth. So that really is how they're running the country now. And this influencing you by your phones, and this whole governance through digital identity of a phone and business running of people rather than legislation running of people, policy, YouTube policy, Amazon, all these policy of companies are now the new government, although they're doing it illegally, like having clauses, we can do it for any reason or no reason. Well, you can't, because it's illegal to have that clause. It's as illegal to have a policy clause which says we can ban your account for any reason or no reason, because that means that they're trying to claim that they could ban your account because you're African or Chinese, and they can't do that. So, but that clause claims that they can. They've actually put in clauses which claim that they can ban your account because you're Chinese, and they don't have to tell you that was the reason. They have to give over that information. So they're actually operating illegally, and that's what YouTube's doing by taking our video channels down, political channels. And this is the exact same mindset as what's happening with the WHO, claiming that they're going to erase the rights. The WHO didn't put those clauses in because they wanted to in the first place. They can't not put those clauses in because Congress shall make no law. And if Congress shall make no law, sure as hell Congress can't agree to any law. Says Congress shall make no law. Now, if Congress, it's it says in law that sometimes a failure to act is an offence. So, like, if you, like, act, it's an offence. So, if you do something illegal, it's an offence. But in some instances, a failure to act is an offence. So, like, you know, a failure to warn someone that something's dangerous, you know, could be an offence, you know, things like that. I strongly believe that that is the case with the Constitution of America. Not only Congress shall make no law, if Congress is agreeing to a law that someone else made, or is, you know, allowing something to be put through that takes away the rights, then Congress is making that law, because it's complying with something that's incompatible and illegal with the Constitution. So I would say that a failure for Congress to block the WHO is treason, and also in England as well, because of this bit here at the bottom. Now, you can check if this is still in effect, but I think that the Bill of Rights is enough. It's enough in the Bill of Rights that it's subverting the fundamental liberties of the realm. A failure of Parliament to act against the WHO and intervene is treason. And it clearly is treason, as much as YouTube are breaking the law on our videos. And it's as much, you know, it's as illegal as, you know, GB News is actually designed to bring various political entities together on television and try and persuade the public for either way or the other, which is illegal by design. The whole idea of it was illegal. It's trying to be modern with the social media influence, because nobody's watching Parliament, because no one's turning up in Parliament, you know. So I'm going to submit this video to the Office of Judicial Investigations as an example of just how corrupt the country is. And I'm not wrong about these things. There's legislation there. I'm also going to tag Senator Rand Paul in this video, because, you know, I'm not wrong about that either. There's a lot of ridiculous things going on in America at the moment, like that Chris Carr bringing RICO charges against a bunch of protesters or something, you know, for racketeering. You can't have racketeering for political activities because it's not a company or business. It's, you know, it would be, you know, it's just not. And ironically, just as like for comedy value, you know, there's a clause in here that says pensioners cannot be MPs or members of Parliament. I think it was repealed, but looking at Biden, you know, the state of Biden at the moment, he's not really fit to be president. That law is quite comical, because, you know, one would argue that, you know, is Biden the equivalent of a pensioner? And if that law was still in effect, then it would basically, you know, if Biden was in, you know, he wouldn't be, is Biden fit for even being in government? You know, when it says pensioners aren't allowed to be ministers. Although they say that was something to do with restricting the power of the cabinet. But so this has to be, this is preventing them from giving away our rights to mainly to foreign interests, really, because this act is all about foreign people, whether or not certain parts of it have been repealed or not. There's a principle in this act which says that you can't give up, you know, the Constitution to foreign powers, or really let foreign powers come into the interest of running the government. Because if you could, what is the point in all these? What's the point in Assange? What is the point in the whole Julian Assange thing? It's meant to be, you know, espionage, foreign interests, you know, helping foreign governments. The problem with Charles and the World Health Organization and the, you know, the World Economic Forum is that they want a global world. They want a global government. They want a global entity. But if they had that, they would have to get rid of all the laws for espionage and spying and aiding foreign governments and military and so forth, because currently there are different countries and we don't have a world government. They're trying to make one, and in order to do that, they'd have to take away all our rights, which they can't. It's treason. But then if they did, they wouldn't be able to prosecute people for espionage and spying against other governments, because it would all be one government. So you couldn't have like Assange, you know. And we're far from being one world government when we've got, you know, Putin and Iraq and Iran and Ukraine and China and so forth. As it stands at the moment, when they've still got all this espionage, helping foreign aiding other governments and so forth, what Parliament are currently engaging in with the World Economic Forum is treasonous. Doesn't matter whether the Tory party are in control of the government or whether Labour got voted in. It's got nothing to do with what political party is in charge or who's in the cabinet or who's the Prime Minister or what private corporate interest Charles has got in his own businesses and affairs and what companies he owns around the world or BlackRock Vanguard. As it stands, we have got rights. And I think Sunak has been overstepping the mark by enacting a lot of these other bills to do with all these locking on laws and other things, but that's another argument. The fundamental basis of the 1688 bill and the other statutes is that you can't, this government hasn't got the authority to agree to take our rights away for any reason, not even medical reasons. Can't do it. And the W.H.O. and the United Nations, and whether it's European Parliament or not, they never ever decided themselves that they were going to write the rules to include our rights. They can't write them to not include them. They can't write them to not include the rights because we can't give them up, even if we wanted to. And it's about time that Andrew Bridgen did something about that. It's not a matter of simply, you know, I know Bridgen has made massive efforts. Like he had his debate rejected apparently, you know, nearly 20 times until he actually finally got the debate, and they had it the other day. So I commend Bridgen everyone's commending Bridgen for his massive efforts. But, you know, there is the 100,000 signature petition already by Dr. Tess Lawries. But has Tess Lawries indicated in the writ for that petition and the text for that petition, has she actually reminded Parliament and stated that, just a minute, you can't actually do that. You can't sit by and let a foreign entity, regardless of whether we're a member of that entity or not, they don't have the legal authority to take away the rights of these people. They can't do it. And our ministers would actually be liable. Firstly, the World Health Organization documents would be invalid and void, even if they claimed to do that and claimed that they had done that. And our ministers would be guilty of treason if they failed to act, if they failed to intervene, would be treason. And also in America as well, it would be, because Congress shall make no law and Congress shall agree to no law, because if they agree to it, it's as good as making it. So I'm going to say to Senator Rand Paul that it's actually treason to, if Congress agreed to that World Economic Forum, it would be treason. And the previous clauses that the WHO have got for complying, rights of other countries, there was no option. There was no option in the first place whether they could or couldn't have them. They don't have them because they want them. They have them because they cannot not have them, right? And I haven't been wrong about other important legal cases like the Dartmoor case with campaign rights. I was right about that. I'm not wrong about YouTube. I'm not wrong about GB News either. And I'm not wrong about this. And I don't need to get 135,000 signatures or whatever that Tess Lawries got. In fact, all petitions have to be amalgamated, whether they've got one signature or not. Whether